if you can't get a degree in philosophy, that does not mean you can't do philosophy.
Right.
Anyone can do it, and basically everyone does it at some point in
Right.
their life.
So I've reached a place of trusting the muse of creativity is ready to come back and sit with me. I trust her. She'll come back and
Mhm.
sit with me when she's ready. The same way I trust myself that when she's ready, I'll be ready to pick up the pen too.
I think the impossibility in writing is that it's the same with painting, that if I write like an academic article or even like a poem or anything, there's always going to be some sort of ambiguity there
Yeah.
because everybody's reading it from their own perspective. But I don't think ambiguity is necessarily a bad thing in philosophy.
We're busting philosophy out of the old stuffy lecture hall and setting it loose on the world of creativity. Join us as we explore the unwritten aesthetic.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Unwritten Aesthetic. Lauren, as always, so lovely to see you, and I'm excited to be chatting today. We're doing something a little bit different, but I think that it's an important thing to talk about I've now, since our last episode and like being weird about calling myself an artist, I've been thinking about that a lot, and it's like, no, while that may not be an identity I've thought I've associated myself with, I do think it's true. So as two artists, our relationship with creativity and creation itself in the process, I think it's something that all artists and creators struggle with in different ways. So I'm excited to be chatting with you and chatting about it.
Yes, likewise. I think this is probably a topic we've touched on here and there, but sort of like being in a creative rut, whether that's like you're a visual artist and you haven't painted anything you like in a while, or like with writing, having like a writer's block for an extended amount of time. And yeah, I mean, I'm interested to hear and compare our strategies for
Yeah.
overcoming those moments of
Yeah.
creative blockages, and whether or not those methods would be different depending on the medium.
Yeah, totally.
Um,
I think
yeah.
it's also interesting to think about like trying to, another thing we'll probably get into is like, even when we're not feeling blocked, like what is our process for um like engaging in creativity? I know we've talked about like our writing process, but sometimes I feel like it's something that it's like resists scheduling and resists structure, but also it's like you kind of have to make it be
Hmm.
structured in a way to have a normal life. Um yeah. So I guess we'll just start when we were talking about a topic for this and you were like, honestly, Loki, I don't know. I've kind of been like in a creative rut. I hope you feel comfortable
Yeah.
with me sharing that, but I would,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
for
let's
sure.
let's talk about it.
We can start there. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's different from how I normally experience like a creative rut in painting, because this one wasn't like, oh, I can't think of anything to paint or I don't want to paint. Um, there's kind of been two dimensions to it that have made it different from a typical creative rut for me, which the first one is I've been writing my term papers. Um, one for metaphysics, which we talked about last week, which is the silliest class I think I've ever taken. And I've really been focused on finishing that up. And something about metaphysics just makes my brain feel like it's calcifying and just turning into a rock. Being like, yeah. So, that was part of it. And then the other part of it was I have been very not diligent about posting on social media. Like, I have quite a few paintings that I have just waiting in the wings to be shared. And I am eager to share them, but I just haven't gotten around to it. And part of that is because sometimes photographing large paintings is really hard for me because, like, the glare, on
Well,
the surface of the canvas. It's
and
like
I feel like photographing art in and of itself is a type
it
of
is an
art.
art, and I'm not that kind of artist. I'm my photography skills are garbage, to be quite frank with you. And so I've been putting that off. But I did actually start another painting yesterday, as kind of a reward. Can't enunciate my words today. As a reward for cutting my paper down to the correct length. Uh
Nice.
yeah. We talked about this last week, but like I handwrite my papers, and that is a method, like a way of giving a creative process structure that really works for me as somebody with like ADHD, you know? Because if I write it on my computer, like I'll just
Keep
all
rewriting.
the I can actualize all the possibilities, but if I handwrite it, then I have to be more choosy with my words. Um, but it ended up being double the length. That
Whoa.
Yeah, the length was like between like 45,000 and 50,000 characters without spaces,
Okay.
and what I typed up ended up being like closer to, I think it was like 94,000 characters. And I thought, like, okay, well, it's like coherent. I understand the entire structure of my paper, so it'll be
Right.
easier to know what to cut. But I think maybe I'll have to revisit that. I don't
Mm,
think that works as well. I had this problem before. I re-hand wrote my thesis into a writing sample for PhD applications like years ago. And I had the same problem there where like I cut out so much of the stuff that I thought was extra. But in philosophy, oftentimes the extra stuff is when that's like when you do all the qualifications and all the sort of
yeah.
one might one might
Yeah. Like
counter that, like all
they're
the little like
really
granted.
there
Yeah.
you often hear people talk about how like it's actually easier to have a larger word
It
count
is.
than shorter, and I think the more you get to a place where like you enjoy writing, the more true that that really is, because you can
Mm-hmm.
just go, and like editing
Yeah.
it down can be really hard because also people who think the way we think, I think we like to bite off a big concept and write about like all of the different ways that it can go, right? And
Mm-hmm.
shorter, even though it's like people will say, well, just write and then cut it down, you can't always do that with every topic. And it's happened to me
Mm-hmm.
before where I've like written, got way further down, and I was like, I need to pick a different topic and write about something else
Yikes.
because I can't
I won't stop.
actually. Well, right. And it's like if I edit this to be within the right word count, this topic is too big for 30,000 characters, right? This topic
Yeah.
is too big for that, for the argument I'm trying to make. And so there is something tricky about like matching your essay selection with the parameters of the actual work. And that was something
Yeah.
that like obviously we've touched on this a little bit in the past too, with you being a student and like writing and practicing philosophy based on assignments and needing to hit deadlines. And you said that deadlines are really helpful for you, but I think sometimes like I really enjoy prompts for writing because just sitting there and thinking about writing an analytical essay, I'm like, well, I don't know, where do I even begin with doing anything for that? And having a prompt can
Yeah.
be really nice, but also then being in a class and needing to write for a grade for specific specifications can also feel really stifling. And it's almost like practicing your creativity to get used to not just working with you, but also working with all of this outside input the whole time. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you, how
Yeah.
does
No,
that,
no, I agree
yeah,
with you. I was reaching for some random shit to take a note with because something recently that I have discovered works for me at least in kind of overcoming that feeling of like feeling stifled
yeah,
by the fact that like, okay, I'm writing this for a class and I'm writing it for a grade, is basically like um if the parameters allow it, to give yourself give yourself an imagined audience, like a different intended audience than like your professor or something like that. Like I've started like with the metaphysics paper, the whole time I was writing that draft, I was writing exactly what I had originally proposed my topic to be, which the professor had wanted me to change a little bit because it sounded a little bit too much like aesthetics, which I emailed her back and I justified it and she said it was okay. But at the time, I caught myself being worried that I was spending all this time writing something and the professor may or may not even approve of the topic in the
Yeah.
end, which would leave me to have a terrible grade. But I knew that it was relevant, so I just trusted myself on that and imagined that instead I was writing it to submit for a journal, like to submit for a call for papers or something.
Right.
And like whether or not I feel it at the moment, to give my writing the air of confidence that one would have if they were writing something for submission to a journal or something like that.
Yeah.
But also that kind of it frames the writing process in like an expectation of more than just like one or two people reading it, which for me in philosophy changes my writing in a way that I think is positive.
I completely
Because
agree.
I want to, I want to write in a way that is understandable for more
Yeah.
than like two people in the same little niche that I'm in, you know?
Right.
Which is hard sometimes.
It
But yeah.
is, especially when you're trying to like go it kind of goes back to the word count a little bit too of like, okay, if I'm really getting into the weeds, and we even talk on this podcast a little bit about like trying not to use too much uh jargon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And trying to explain at least when we do, because what we're doing here, like we want to make it accessible, and most philosophy is not. And so
Yeah.
needing sometimes a bigger word count allows you to make it more accessible, because it's like, well, this is the thing that I really want to say, but I want to break down the nuances of that for someone who may not have ever heard the word metaphysics before, right? Like, so when I'm forming this argument, I want Joe Blow on the street to be able to see how it's relevant to them. But in order to like really make that relevant, it requires a little bit more time to make that point cogent. And yeah, I completely hear that. I like that suggestion of like creating a different imagined audience. And I love what you said about giving your writing an air of confidence, of like what you would do if you were writing for a publication and not just a class. That was something that I really struggled with when I was writing my thesis. Was I knew that eventually I wanted to expand it into a larger book, and for like a more general audience and not an academic one. But my thesis advisors kept saying like, remember, you are writing this for us right now. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a good point. Like I need
Yeah.
to think about like that framing, but there is a certain type of confidence that comes with this is being published for a big audience. My voice is worth being heard on that scale. How would you
Yeah.
write differently if your
Yeah.
voice is being heard in that way? I really,
Yeah.
really love that.
Well, also, I mean, something that I'm trying to internalize more so in the past couple days, is like it doesn't have to just be an imagined audience. Like
Yeah.
especially considering the length of like the word count of my term papers is basically it's we're talking about writing. I can't even like formulate a sentence here about about a word count. Basically, a lot of journal like a lot of call for papers have a similar word count as my term papers. And so like they can be repurposed to submit. Like it doesn't just have to be to fulfill a requirement of a class.
Yeah.
And so if the class allows it and if I can write on a topic that I feel is worth sharing to a wider audience, I would like to try to force myself to submit my work to more journals and whatnot. I mean, I don't have a PhD yet, so there's that limitation. But which I also think is so strange. That I mean, I'm not saying that like it could just be that my work is not good enough. Um, but I imagine the peer review people reading it and be like, you can definitely tell that this is like a master's student or something like that. Where um I don't know, I was just thinking about this earlier because I was submitting like something for a call for papers. And I I don't know, I'm just gonna stop worrying about that kind of thing because either my ideas stand on their own or they don't. Like if they
Yeah.
don't have any legs to stand on, then that's fair. But I wish there was more, uh, not as much red tape, I guess. But
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
I'm out of my self-limiting mindset. I'm out of my
Love that.
victim mentality. Um, I'm gonna stop being a crybaby about that and just submit stuff as we.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Yeah.
too, like, the worst that people can say is no, right? And
Right. Yeah.
unfortunately, when you submit for calls for papers or publications or journals, like, they don't, it's only happened to me like once where someone wrote back and was like, hey, this is really great, but we usually look for something that's a bit more in this style. If you
Oh, that's
resubmit,
nice.
we would love to like hear something that approaches it from this angle or from this with this type of writerly voice. And I was like, oh, that's super helpful.
Yeah.
And you
Oftentimes it feels
usually,
like I don't know what they want.
right. And you
I
usually
mean,
don't get the feedback of like, this is why you were rejected. And it's like, I wish that more journals would do that, but I get that it takes a lot of time to do that and why you can't always. But I do think sometimes it's not, there is the letters behind your name add some credibility. Like there is that piece of the puzzle. And part of why we're doing this is like, that's a very traditional academic way of like institutionalizing philosophy and also putting up more barriers to entry. And even as I'm saying that, I'm like, and also it keeps it wider, more affluent, more traditional when letters and schooling are the thing that we're judging merit of writing based on. And I think that can happen subconsciously too, right? Like not everyone is um doing that on purpose. If they are doing it, some people I'm sure are, but I think all of us, you see PhD and it's like, oh, that does have a certain gravitas
right.
to it. Um
Yeah.
but I think it's been really cool to see a lot of journals and different publications that are coming out that are specifically for like younger people. Like I saw one came across my Instagram the other day that was like for undergrads. And I was like, oh,
Oh,
that's awesome. That's really
that is
cool.
awesome.
That it's like, no, we want to publish undergraduate voices. And I was like, that's really important that that work is happening um to kind of deinstitutionalize and demarginalize a lot of what's being talked about. Um, so I'm sure that does still play a role though, and it is frustrating being like,
Yeah.
you don't know. You just don't know.
Yeah. But this is, hey, I'm really talking about this like this is just how I live all the time. But this is a new thing that I've implemented in my life in the past 2 days, basically. Because no, I'm being dead serious because the deadline to submit for this thing that I submitted to was today.
Oh, whoa.
And luckily there's a little bit of a time difference. So I literally submitted it the last day possible. Like last night at like 10:30 p.m. I was like, you wrote it in your planner. Do it.
You gotta
Just
do
do it.
it.
Like, and so I just redid my term paper for Heidegger from last semester, the one
Oh,
that you read.
nice.
I shortened that by like a couple thousand words. And then I made like a cover page. I made an abstract. And I think I've been trying to get back to the writer's block thing. I maybe you can relate to this since we both have sort of this spiritual sort of feeling towards language as like, you know, this impossible obligation that like language is the house of being and all this, you know, um all this stuff. And I've been trying to, I don't know, like sometimes writing is just easy. Sometimes it doesn't have to be hard. You know,
Yeah.
like I've been trying to write in the same way that I speak, which I mean, I choose my words.
Right.
Sometimes my thoughts aren't expressed exactly how I want them to, but just to start and
Yeah.
just to keep going, like for the past like 2 weeks, probably I've been probably more than that. Maybe like the past month I've been writing every day. It's been term papers, but just to like, even if I don't really feel in the zone, like I've gone to the library the past 2 days with not really a clear idea of what my second Heidegger term paper is going to be about. But I was like, okay, I know I need to do like a close reading and like an overview section of like this chapter. So let me just read it and start handwriting, like paraphrasing it and, you know, making notes of like the things that I find most fascinating about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't always get that far, but, like, just to kinda keep that writing muscle, um, you know,
Flexing.
use it or lose it, as they
Yeah.
say.
Right. I love
Yeah.
that approach, though, of writing the way you speak. And it's so funny that you say that because that's always something I think I fight with myself on when we talk about different audiences and writing with an air of confidence. I think part of the confidence is also knowing you don't always need to sound smart in order for
Mhm.
your writing to be important and worth
Yeah.
reading. And that's something that I really struggled with in my master's program was like wanting to like jam pack as many like nuances and complexities and wrinkles and like different ways of interpreting every single thing into all of these papers because I'm like, oh, I'm like in grad school now and I need to
Mm.
like up level and this needs to be intelligent, right? It's like, but also that's writing from a place of insecurity of I don't believe in my points enough as they are, so I need
Yeah, you
the
feel like you gotta, like,
guys.
dress them up.
Right, I need the
Give them
guise
some
of, like,
jewels.
a fancy gown in order for my ideas to feel like the prettiest girl at the ball. Um,
Yeah.
when actually, if you believe in what you're saying, that will come through, and I also really love one thing I started doing so kind of to your idea of the creative process and just engaging with it every day and, like, the muse of creativity, like, use it or lose it, I think is definitely something regardless of how you practice, like, you need to be doing, as a writer, some sort of writing every day, even if it's, like, free flow journaling just about how you're feeling. I'm like, I wanna be putting pen to paper every day. But
Yeah.
one thing that I started doing this week, which is so funny that you said that, like, you've had this shift in the last few days, because I really struggle with when I have a point that I want to make about something and I'm like, and I want to make a TikTok about it, or I want to make a short video that isn't like a full video that I want to put on YouTube that's like an essay, but just kind of a compilation of some different thoughts. But I want there to be a clear argument, a thesis, and like an arc to what I'm creating. I really struggle like writing out a script for it, but it's like I have these 5 different points that I see how they connect. But it's weird because the way I'm writing like a script for a social media video is not the way I record social media videos because it's a very different voice and a very different audience.
Yeah, of course,
Um
yeah.
so what I started doing is using dictate on like my text messages and just talking out the first draft of like if I was going
Yeah.
to record this TikTok straight through and then editing from there. And it's made it
Yeah. I do
so
that
much
too sometimes.
easier.
That's a great
And
tip.
Yeah, and so hearing you say, like, writing how you talk, it's like we all also talk differently in different environments. Like, when I'm at dinner with my friends, I'm talking in a very different way than if I'm in a job interview. And so it doesn't feel disingenuous to say that, like, you can write how you talk for an academic essay, but also for a TikTok. But it's like very clearly how you talk for those two different audiences are going to be different. But I think sometimes forming an argument for me in a non-academic way is really hard. Like, how do I form an
Yeah.
argument for a TikTok audience? Um, and this has been a
Yeah.
way that makes it easier to, like, reach that balance.
No, I really like that. Yeah, like sometimes writing how you talk is literally just talking. Like
Yeah.
just like doing the like I use the voice to text thing a lot, especially when I feel like um like when you have a bunch of ideas just kind of swimming around your head, and especially like complex philosophical ideas, and you know that they connect in some way but you haven't fully like synthesized the
Yeah.
connection.
Yes,
Sometimes
exactly.
talking it out for me is the best way to go about that. And like when I say I handwrite my papers, like I don't just like start from nothing and then handwrite it. I usually type up all of my annotations and notes, I'll show you because this is actually psychotic. Um well, not actually psychotic. I Let me not use that kind of language in a colloquial way. It's not psychotic, it's just very you'll
It's
see. So
specific.
so I I type up all my notes, I print them out, um, I go through and I cross out the ones that I don't want anymore with a black marker. If I'm not sure, gray marker. And then sometimes if the notes are clear enough, I can just start writing from there and keep crossing them out every time I've handwritten something that involves that idea. But when I have too much ideas, which is everything that I write about Heideggerian philosophy ever, I cut them out and I put them on and I put
Oh,
them on little. So what's this one?
hey, you know
So
what?
this one, what's this one? This one's facticity and something else. No, this one's resoluteness, authenticity, something like that. And yeah. And
No,
then there's literally so many. But
one,
then I
it's
can
so
go through.
pleasing to my brain to watch. But sorry, I'll let you finish and then I'll say my other point. I'm
No,
sorry.
no, but like I think sometimes it just stresses me out because then I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Like what the fuck is this? Like just write. This is ridiculous.
I'm making a
Um
scrapbook of a paper.
yeah, but sometimes if I can't bring myself to write yet and I feel overwhelmed, like this is something I've noticed like with my ADHD that's very helpful, like a helpful
Yeah.
tool for me is uh like the opposite of out of sight, out of mind. Like actually putting all the ideas in front of me, literally like on the table in little
Yeah.
squares, so I can like categorize them and kind of group them together that way
I
in order to
adore
synthesize
this
big ideas. Yes, nice.
so much
Go ahead.
because one, it's impossible to like hold 30 different ideas that it's like, I know that these connect and this thing connects to this and to this and to this, but this also connects to this. And it's like, you can't mind map that in your head. And so what I did with my thesis was I did a huge mind map on, like one of the classrooms for Idea Factory, the institute that I worked at during my grad time and post grad, what I was teaching in my classroom had an entire
Reese taught a
whiteboard.
class,
I used to teach. I said that
but
last
like
night
in college,
in
like for
college.
university students.
I said that last night at a housewarming party that I was at, and there were a few people that I hadn't met yet, and one of them was like, "You're a professor?" And I was like, "Well,
Well,
no."
not exactly.
I was like, "Let's be clear. There's adjunct in front of that. Not to undermine adjunct professors at all, but it's like I
But
am
you were an adjunct
certainly
professor?
Yeah, for a year and a half until I
Damn.
decided that I needed to follow my own path outside of academia. And
I
also
outgrew my role there. I
right.
had bigger fish to fry.
Well, and let's also be clear, I was not being paid enough, even at
Yeah,
one of
that's
the
true.
most affluent private schools in the nation. I when calculating, because as an adjunct professor, this is such a tangent, but as an adjunct professor, you get a flat rate for each class you teach. And based on
Oh,
whether it's a 1 credit hour or a 3 credit hour, there's a different rate. The amount of work I was doing outside of class to prepare for class, prepare for all of these things, and
you had to do
also
the lesson plan and everything?
lesson planning,
Grading stuff, probably?
reading, grading, prepping, like, and most of the assignments I assign my students were essays, and so it's like, it's a lot of time to grade, and students want things back yesterday, and they'll be like,
Yeah.
Do you have the grade for this yet?" And I'm like, "It's gonna be fine. You're gonna be
That was
fine."
literally me in undergrad. Excuse me, teacher. I was really curious to hear your feedback on my essay.
Well, and so I would have
You're like, "I'm
appreciated if
busy."
someone I would have
I'm
appreciated if
making
someone was
minimum
like,
wage,
"I
basically.
wanna know your feedback," but it's always, "What was my grade?" And I'm like, "I don't wanna
Did
just
I
tell
ever
you
tell
your
you?
grade."
Can I continue the tangent? Because
Yes.
I don't know if I ever told you this, but I had an English teacher sophomore year of high school who, anytime somebody asked him if the assignment would be graded, he wouldn't say anything. He would walk over to the corner of the classroom, get out a ladder, move it
Oh,
into our seats were arranged like in a circle, so he'd get the ladder, he'd bring it over silently, place it down in the middle of the room, get up on it, and start like scooching, like scratching around on the like concrete floors, like whatever
that's
that like
so funny.
laminate floors or whatever.
Yeah.
And he'd usually just do that for like a minute or two and then get off the ladder, put it back, and then go, "Any more questions?"
I love that so
Yeah.
much, so much.
He was a
But
very silly man.
all that to say for this, one day I was feeling very frustrated about the amount of work I was doing because I was like, I feel like I'm just not being paid enough. And so I like averaged out the amount of time that I was spending for each class, like outside of class, plus the time for a class. I was making about $4 an hour. Granted, not every teacher may be doing as much work outside of class as I was doing, but doesn't that
Yeah.
incentivize teachers to do less
Less?
work?
Yeah.
So what are we doing here? So all that to
Yikes.
say,
That's
one,
nothing.
academia was academia, talk about red tape. Two, I was like, I have a master's degree and I'm making $4 on the hour, like the yeah, hair flip. And it was just not the best situation for me at the time. But I
Yeah.
certainly learned a lot during that experience. But there this was the point of the tangent. There was a huge wall that was all whiteboard in the classroom. And
That's cool.
so at the time, before I would like mind map out everything on the whiteboard, and it was super helpful. But I kept having to like run back to my computer and like reference my notes and be like, oh yeah, there's this. So like actually just printing it all out and cutting it up, I think is a better method. And then the other thing that I was going to say is that was literally how I was taught to write a research paper in elementary school. They
No way.
said to go in, research, and make I will never forget it because it like kind of blew my
In
mind that it was like,
elementary school?
yeah, it was probably like 5th grade, like higher elementary school, but it blew my mind because I was like, this is how people write papers because it was the first time that I had like
Whoa.
an assigned paper. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and they said like to draw a line down the middle of like your notebook paper and on one side write like the name of the article, the author of it, and like what you need to cite it. And then on the other side, write what you're learning about it in your own words to prevent
Yes.
plagiarism. And I was like,
Yeah.
amazing. And you do that on the whole thing, and then you cut up the strips and organize them on the floor in your cogent thought. That was literally how I was taught to write a research paper.
Hell yeah! No, it's such a good method.
Hell yeah, Miss Vaughn.
Yeah, let's go, Miss Vaughn.
Shout out Miss Vaughn. I haven't talked to Miss Vaughn in so long, but shout out Miss Vaughn.
That's
she was a great
amazing.
English teacher in 5th grade.
No, but that's something I've noticed too is and like this is the thing that I've kind of had to get over, and like the reason why I wasn't enjoying my program last winter was basically because I was trying to rush through all of this and like check it off the to-do list. But in order to actually do research well, like at least for me, I have to take the time to, from the start, like put it in my own words.
Yeah.
Because there are some things like with secondary literature, where like if I read it on the PDF, then I'll like copy the text and then paste it in a Word doc and like put in quotations, obviously, and with the page number, like, and then do like an indent and put my notes underneath it. But then what ends up happening is you end up with like 50 billion of these like random, like, you know, like,
yeah. Well, and I find that
it's so many.
It's so many. Well, and I feel
there's
like
more
if I don't, if I
so
don't
annoying.
take the time to write it in my own words, like the point that I'm actually taking from this and what is important, I'll forget my point, and then I'll forget why I thought it was relevant to the argument I'm making too. And it's like, why the hell did I think that this thing was connected to this? Like I'm forgetting, but if I had written down when I thought about it why I thought it was connected, then I wouldn't be forgetting.
Right. And that's the thing, like, that's why the caveat to these papers where, like, sometimes it's useful, but it's not useful if you have this much stuff. And the only reason you would have this much stuff at this stage in the research process is because, like, it's still sort of a prioritization of the way other people have expressed the same thought, and sort of a laziness of not wanting to take the time at that moment to put it in my own words.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, it is useful, like, to have all your notes typed up of like textual evidence, you know?
Right.
Which is why I think this was not super useful, because like for textual evidence and like for overviews of like primary sources and stuff, it makes more sense to not do this and actually have the annotations sort of in chronological order. You know?
Sure.
Like with being in time, at least, for example. So that's why I'm going back and I'm just ignoring all of my random scrapbook notes and just doing like close reading and paraphrasing, like in real time, I guess.
Yeah.
Like reading a section and then doing the writing part and then and
no,
it's
I think
taking
that
forever, but
right. I think that
feels more like because this, looking at this, I think it's so funny. That's why I keep showing it. So it
is really funny.
But like this stresses me out.
Right.
It's useful sometimes. That's the point I'm trying to make in like way too many words.
No, and I think the overall point that at least I keep interrupting. I'm
No, I keep interrupting.
No, me.
No, I do. I know, I'm sorry.
Interrupters go off in the comments.
Yes.
But I think the overall thing that I'm taking from what you're saying is that like ultimately it can be a helpful tool to unlock what you're trying to say, because you want to ground what you're trying to say in the primary texts and the research that you're pulling from, and, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants and all of that good stuff. But also, you can't let paraphrasing someone else's words become the ultimate thrust of your paper. Your paper still needs to be your voice and your points. And while this is a helpful organizational tool, it's not a substitute for writing or like a
Mhm.
writerly voice that you are adding to the process.
Yeah. Well, I think, like, my main sort of caveat that I'm dancing around, and I don't know why it shouldn't be it's useful sometimes, that's the main idea, but, I think sometimes I have too many of my own ideas, which isn't a bad thing,
Mm.
but if I am trying to ground it in a particular text or a particular framework, then it's very useful to have a really solid understanding
Yeah,
of that framework. And I mean, granted, it's this ain't my first rodeo. Like I've
right.
read and written Heideggerian stuff before, but
I mean, that's
this
your
is
bread and butter.
it's my bread and butter. But that also doesn't mean I think relying on that sort of like, oh, I've read the book before, and then just writing is how you end up having shitty papers. Because I mean, Division 2, I haven't written about Division 2 in a long time. I don't
Mm,
think ever, other than, like, high school when I was like, "Wow." Like, I was, like, a baby in existentialism, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool."
yeah.
Um,
I think too,
so
that's such a
it's
great
just like
point
yeah.
for like, because I think oftentimes, like at least in undergrad or in, I had one grad class that literally we had to read a novel a week. And I'll be honest, I didn't read all those novels.
No, of course not.
I didn't have the
How
time
could
for
you?
that. Um,
No.
and but anything that I wrote on, I made sure that I had read all of
Yeah.
100%. But even then, I think sometimes we and in saying we, I am implicating myself in this, but I'm also implicating like maybe all academic writing where it's like you don't get to pick your topic necessarily. But even then, like even when we're picking our topic, just as writers, I think it's not just having read something, it's having an intimate relationship with the text too, which is returning to it and reanalyzing it and living with it. And um like one read through is not enough for probably anything out there except like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, right? To write like an actual
Don't
like
speak too soon.
yeah.
There's some Easter eggs in there.
Right.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
But it's like to have a really it, I mean, I'll use it like an intimate familiarity with what this thing is really trying to argue. I
Mhm.
think this process that you're talking about kind of cultivates that instead of just encouraging like readership, even though I think something that I'm also thinking about throughout this conversation is that like being a reader and a consumer of media is also important for creativity and like inspiration, absolutely, both of ancient and classic texts and primary sources, but also just like watching movies and TV shows and being in the world and experiencing is also really important for creativity. But I think sometimes, especially when we're in a rush, which I think tends to happen for things we don't maybe care about as much, or for things that feel like, oh, this is just an assignment and there's a deadline and life is crazy and I'm working and I'm a student and that's not something that I think is necessarily emphasized too much in at least my experience in university that like no it's not just about make sure you've read it, it's like you need to pay attention to this to really be in communion with these words as you're
Yeah.
adding.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, in my experience, it's the times, like the papers where I didn't read the text really closely. I did
Yeah,
read it, but I didn't read it very closely, and I didn't let myself really sit with it. And those are usually the papers that take me the longest and that end
yeah,
up being the worst,
yep,
in my opinion. And So I think you would agree with me here in saying like writing confidently requires reading closely. Like
Yeah.
at least when you're doing stuff like textual analysis, like comparative lit stuff
Yeah.
or philosophy stuff, if your argument is based, I cannot articulate my words today. I don't know.
You're good.
If your argument
Argument.
argument if your argument is based in like a primary text, then like it's a lot easier to write confidently and to really let your own ideas and your own, you know, insights, you know, what? Like shine through if
Yeah,
you have the confidence knowing like I read this very closely. And you can
I
say
know
like
what I'm
here are
talking about.
yeah, yeah, and you can be like here are all the points. Um like, you know,
Yeah. I
citations.
also
When your
one thing
parenthetical citations are like full of page numbers, you know?
Yeah.
Cause you know, you're like,
'Cause
I know you mentioned this on page 47.
well, and what I was
So,
gonna say is, like, if you have, like, your idea that you wanna argue, and then as you're writing, at least this when I'm in the flow is what happens to me, is, like, I'm like, "Okay, this is my idea, I'm gonna be writing it. As I'm writing, the things that I wanna cite will come to me, and if I don't remember
mhm,
exactly where it is, I can go find it in the
mhm.
book and then just add the right page number, citation, or whatever, but I
Yeah.
know the piece that I am trying to cite there, and it's like, "Oh, yeah, because that ties back to this," and I can keep going.
Yeah.
It's
That's
when I
super useful
start
too.
with the citation sometimes, or I'm like, I'm just piecing citations that I thought sounded cool together, and I'm trying to come up with my opinion about it kind of secondarily, that it gets tricky, which sometimes that is a good place to start, though, if you don't know exactly what you're wanting to argue. And I think that also just speaks to the difference in different works, different essays, different types of essays that you're writing, like what's going to be the most effective way. And I think the other thing with like the creative process that I wanted to make sure we touched on was how it's always evolving and changing. Like there's no 2 days that look exactly the same when I sit down to write. Like, I start from a slightly different place, I am using something slightly different as a jumping off point, I'm reading different things, I'm consuming different things, and some days I want to write with pen and paper, some days I do it on my computer, some days it's. And I think that's also a hard thing with wanting to have a routine with creativity is that like creativity by definition and by nature is open. And to want to kind of capture it is this impossible obligation of it all, right? And it's like the continual human experience of trying to capture it every single day that is flexing the muscle of impossible obligation because it is
Yeah.
ever changing.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I think maybe this is the mindset change that has actually allowed me to write regularly. I don't know if saying every day is nearly every day, is that I think I've changed my mindset from like I'm trying to capture it to I'm actively formulating it. I'm actively formulating
Mm,
it. I'm not like chasing after it, but it's like sort of this internal like thing, you know. I mean, obviously there's like the taking in and then uh the synthesizing or whatever.
yeah,
But I think that's one aspect of this sort of like spiritual perspective on language that hasn't served me very well.
mm,
Which is like it's the impossible obligation and I need to capture it. I mean, I think the impossibility in writing is that it's the same with painting that
yeah,
if I write like an academic article or even like a poem or anything, but there's always going to be some sort of ambiguity there
yeah,
because everybody's reading it from their own perspective. And, but I don't think ambiguity is necessarily a bad thing in philosophy. I think
not at
it can
all.
be used, um, in a positive way. So I think being comfortable with the inevitable ambiguity, like there's going to be a little bit of ambiguity. And that's, I mean, if there wasn't philosophy would have ended ages ago. It wouldn't be
Right.
very interesting if we could just read something and be like, all right, well, that's pretty straightforward. I guess I'll go get a job in accounting. I'm kidding.
Right.
We're always dogging on
Yeah,
accounting.
we are.
But
Yeah. No, I
yeah.
think that's a really, really great point. And I think even in what I was saying about like, and it's grappling with it every day, like that
It
makes the
is.
stakes, it is in some sense,
Yeah, yeah,
but
it makes the
also
stakes really high.
it makes the stakes so high that it's like
Yeah.
daunting as
Yeah, where it's like, "Oh, I'm
opposed,
going to church." I have to like, like it's like I gotta like, you know,
yeah.
or something
Yeah.
like it's like a whole it makes a ritual of it, which is really
Yes.
wonderful and a very like wonderful um mindset to be in when you're approaching writing. But I feel like for me, the more serious I take it, like the worse I am at formulating my ideas. Because the
Yeah.
stakes are too high that they're just like suffocating and then
Yeah.
I feel like everything that I write is wrong because it doesn't quite capture it. Whereas
Mm.
just was like, well, yeah, it hasn't captured it yet because like I'm sort of working my way around it. Like the capturing it is sort of like in the word you write your words, it's like skirting around the mystery.
It
Um,
also, the way you described, like, I'm not necessarily, like, reaching out for something and, like, trying to grab it because that feels like this other thing. It's almost like
yeah,
coming back into the self and letting that kind of be the source. It called up the image that we've talked about before, and I'm not gonna remember exactly which episode, but the how we've talked about my one line that if all of life is pointing to one thing, what is that thing? And how we've talked about like all of these different arrows from all of these different places kind of converging on this one point versus flipping those arrows around and actually living life expressing outwardly from that point. That feels like I correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounded like what you were describing a little bit in this,
yeah.
like, instead of trying to like reach for the thing that life is pointing to, it's like, no. Yes. So
I
instead
don't know why I
of
drew like an egg in the middle,
I kind
like
of
a sunny side
it
up
looks
egg.
like the little middle part makes me think of the Eye of Sauron.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like in the middle.
Yeah, I
But
forgot to
it's
draw
like
all the arrows outwards. But yeah.
starting from the inside and working outward, which feels like a more again, correct me if I'm wrong with how you experience this, but it feels like it values the part that you have to play in the exchange as opposed to
Yes.
like I'm chasing this thing that I couldn't be like worthy of and everything I do isn't quite good enough, but it's like
Yeah, yeah.
no. I am the conduit of this thing that's happening in the role, like it's an exchange. I'm a mirror of the thing that I'm talking about and it wouldn't be happening if I wasn't here.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. That was a couple different weird
No. That
ways to
is
talk about it, but
it is it is precisely that. And I think that the arrows going inwards and then outwards is it's a very good sort of picture of a lot of things that we discuss.
yeah.
But I think this is I part of it is like a natural progression from like when you first start writing academic papers. And I know at least for me I was doing a lot of uh citing other people, you
Mhm.
know? Like I wasn't just standing on is it standing on the heads of giants? I wasn't just doing that.
Shoulders,
I was
but
like
head oh,
shoulders,
maybe it
whatever.
is heads. I don't know.
Mm, I don't know. But you know what I mean. But I
Yeah.
was more sort of like cowering behind the giants and be like, "You know, you go. Like you're pretty good." you
Yeah.
know? And like I'd kind of be like, "Well, this person said this, and this is very similar to what this person said. So there's a common ground here." But I wasn't really making any of my own ideas. And I think I've really enjoyed witnessing my academic research take on much more of my own voice.
Mm.
And I think that is coming, I mean, for one thing, it's coming from what we discussed with like reading well enough and like being prepared for the writing stuff, but also just sort of the confidence that my ideas are actually good enough and that I don't have to grapple endlessly to make sure they are expressed in just the right way in order
Yeah.
for them to still be intelligible to other people as good ideas. I mean, again, not everyone's gonna like my ideas. That's totally fine.
If they don't, I'll
But
beat them up.
yeah, I'll send Reese to beat him up. But
I know I'm very scary.
I think I think it's like yeah, I mean, I don't know, philosophy is one of those things where yes, background knowledge is relevant, but in a way everybody has the same skill set required to write an interesting, thought-provoking piece of philosophical work. And
Totally.
so I think it is one of the few disciplines where like the red tape of higher education doesn't necessarily need to be a boundary. Um, like if you can't get a degree in philosophy, that does not mean you can't do philosophy.
Right.
Anyone can do it. And basically everyone does it at some point in their
Right.
life. You
Think it's
know,
kind of impossible not to. And
yeah,
one thing that you said too that was making me think like maybe it's not even just flipping the arrows around, but it's actually the process of like doing the research, reading closely, writing your thoughts on the words from the beginning is like arrows pointing in as you're like gobbling up all of the information and things, and then when you sit down to do the writerly thing, we flip the arrows outward, and it's
yes,
almost like trusting yourself that like
yeah,
the arrows can stand on their own at that point. Like you've done the work enough to throw it away. Um like you have to
yeah.
it's like
That's
you've
the most fun part of a paper when you're just like,
right.
and also, and
Yeah.
moreover, by
And
the same
therefore,
token,
yeah, by the same token,
yeah.
on this,
On this note,
yeah,
correspondingly,
correspondingly,
on the contrary, that's what I really like. I'd
all
be
of
like,
the
it's not the case
segues.
that this, blah, blah, blah. On the contrary, that's how
Yeah,
you know I'm really serious.
that's how you know she's cooking. She's cooking.
Yeah.
Um, but also it
Uh,
makes me think of like, since we both have a background in performance too, like the actor needs to memorize their lines so that they can throw it away and just exist and be. And you're still
yeah.
using the lines, but that's not the interesting part of a performance. And that's like
hmm
very much the same thing with writing. I feel like I've talked a lot around things to get to a very like, well,
No,
duh point,
no, that made
but
perfect sense. No, yeah, and like same with, I mean, with acting, it's like if an actor messes up a couple words of a line, but it's conveyed like they're,
right.
they're really like embodying it,
Yeah.
and the message is conveyed despite the fact that like they might have like switched up a couple words or whatever. I mean, in academia, obviously, writing conventions and like grammar and stuff is important, and but I think kind of knowing that and like being confident that your message that you have the capacity to convey what you want to convey,
Yeah.
even if it's like you don't have to dress it up. Um, I mean, it's
Yeah.
fun too. It's fun to use big words sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I think the other thing to point out too about like dressing things up and like, of course, there are like functions of grammar and spelling that are necessary for like just understanding what someone is saying and wanting to
Yes.
communicate clearly. But I think there's also a lot to be said for like the white supremacist and
White supremacist.
like, okay, there's a bunch of research around the patriarchal white supremacist history of grammar. It's really, really interesting,
Damn.
especially with, like, um, what is it? African American Vernacular
Oh,
English,
yeah. Like
AAVE?
linguistic
Yes.
prejudice and stuff.
Right. So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
also, like, that piece of this puzzle, which isn't exactly what we're talking about, but, like, important to note as we're also
Mhm.
saying, like, anyone could practice philosophy outside of like
Yeah.
traditional academic formats. Everyone is. And I think one thing that I would be curious about, like as we kind of close out, is on days that you are like, I am just not feeling creative, or like even if you've been in a slump for like, I've gotten into slumps for like a month and a half where I'm
Oh,
like,
me
I
too.
just feel like nothing is, what am I? What am I doing?
No,
Uh,
yeah, me too.
what do you do?
Um, so that's a good question. I mean, it really depends on what I'm doing. Like, when it comes to poetry, that happens a lot, and I notice it's sometimes it's when, like, if I'm painting a lot and I feel really creative in painting, my words almost falter, like, as if I have to pick one or the other. It's not always like that, but that is something I've noticed that I find fascinating.
Yeah.
With poetry, I don't force myself to write poetry. It just happens when it needs to happen. And there are times where I feel kind of like, well, I haven't written a poem in a while, but I, we've talked about
Yeah.
this, at least with my poetry writing process. It's very like, gotta go write this poem down. And then I may not write another poem for like a month or even like two.
Yeah.
Um, with painting, uh, I don't know, like it depends on like how these other aspects of my life intersect. Like there are times when I don't paint for a long time. Well, recently it's been the longest time that I haven't painted at all. Like the last painting I finished was the portrait of my friend, so that was like the end of July.
Mhm.
And I just now started up a painting yesterday. So that's the longest time I haven't painted at all in a really long time. Um, and I mean, there were definitely times where I was like, I want to paint, but I just didn't. I had other fish to fry.
Yeah.
This isn't a very helpful answer because it's basically me just being like, yeah, there was other stuff I had to do, so I couldn't.
But
But
I
I mean,
think that
times where
that's
like I can't paint anything, like I am painting, but I'm not painting anything that I actually like enough to
yeah.
finish it. Um, those can be frustrating times, but I think, um, I don't know. I think I've also just become more comfortable with like, there are a couple paintings I have right now that aren't finished, but I've just kind of left them in the corner to collect dust. And then sometimes, like I'll have a random idea and be like, "Oh, I should do that. That's what I should do with this piece."
Yeah.
And so I've tried to stop. I used to really enjoy like cutting up paintings because it's really satisfying. But like I can acknowledge like this painting is a failure and then keep it and then maybe one day I'll have an idea that'll.
Yeah.
So kind of knowing that like that's a possibility makes me feel less bad about
Yeah.
setting it aside for a while.
Well, and I think also like the creative process for different works and different mediums,
Yeah, it's
like
so
the
different that
timeline.
having a hard time giving you like a good answer to this
No,
question.
I think it's just interesting to hear, but it's like very much there could be one work that it's like maybe it feels finished in a bad way, but actually it's just
Mhm.
still in process, but that process like, isn't going to be picked back up for like years maybe. Whereas another piece, it's like you work on it continuously for a month and that's the complete process for that one. And it's like the timeline can just be so different. And
Yeah.
also, I think as creative people living in a world with responsibilities and bills and payments and due dates and deadlines and things, it's like sometimes you literally don't have time for
Yeah.
the process. And that's a very real part of like creative living is finding ways to live creatively in the midst. Um, even if you don't necessarily have access to an easel and a paintbrush or to your notepad and a pen or, you know, whatever medium you have, how can you still imbue the process in living so that you don't feel like I haven't done anything creative in
Mhm.
a year, right? Even if you're in the
Yeah.
midst of a really busy season, it's like I think we can um be flexible with what our definitions of creativity are too.
Mhm. Yeah. But, how would you answer that question? Because that was mostly, like, a painting-focused answer,
Yeah.
but especially for somebody who does I'm, like, compared to me, probably much more creative writing on a regular basis.
I
Um,
do well, it's interesting because I
'Cause I feel like
haven't
writer's block is something that can be kind of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like this is something I wanted to ask you is, like, with practicing different mediums, do you feel like you always have one going or that you hit a block with all mediums at this like, is it a creative block or is it a medium process block, if that makes sense? Because for
Hmm,
me, when I'm like, if I hit a creative writing block, it feels like everything halts. Like, writing
mm,
is kind of like the foundation of most of what I do, except for like podcasting because it is just like so conversationally based. Um, but like even projects that I do online or videos that I'm creating or pieces that I do, it always starts with some sort of story arc. I feel like
mhm.
storytelling is the foundation of everything I do. So if I hit a writer's block, I feel like everything halts. And
Okay, yeah.
so what I did for a really long time was just wrote anyways, and it was like you just had to put pen to paper and one of these days it's gonna be fine. And now I don't do that. I
Okay.
mean, I journal every day, but that doesn't necessarily feel like the same type of writing. It's
Yeah,
more
it's
like a
not like
diary than
storytelling. Yeah.
right. So it's like that is one practice that I'm like, no, it's important to me to keep that up, but which is both for writing but also for like mental health and other
Sure, yeah.
practices. Um, but I've stopped doing that and I started trying to just let it come to me. And when I don't have an idea for something, I'm like, you don't have an idea. That's
Yeah.
okay. Like my worth
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
tied to my output or my
Yeah.
creative ideas, you know, that it's like I'm inherently worthy as a human being and my presence in and of itself is worthy as it is and living in presence as who I am. Eventually something is going to occur that I'm going to want to explore. And I
Yeah.
trust that. I think used to the reason why I was like, you have to keep going was because I was afraid that I would never get another idea. I would never have another
Oh.
spark. I would never have another
You'll never have an idea again.
right, right, and it
Can you
was like,
imagine? Oh, that
"Oh,
sounds terrible.
shit, like, this is the one thing that I was here to do and I did it, life is over." But I've realized that it's like, that's not what I actually believe life is about, what the human experience is about, nor is that
Mhm.
what I believe, um, about myself anymore. Um, and so I've reached a place of like in trusting myself, trusting both the like spiritual aspect of this that we were talking about, that it's like whenever, you know, the muse of creativity is ready to come back and sit with me, I trust her. She'll come back and sit with me when she's ready. The same way I trust myself that when she's ready, I'll be ready to pick up the pen too.
Yeah.
So I've tried to trust, and I actually think that in trusting, it puts a lot of ease on it. It's kind of like
Yeah.
when you're looking for a relationship, it won't happen, but when you stop looking for it, then like suddenly
Yeah,
everyone starts
yeah.
hitting on you kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's it's
Yeah, that's a good
similar
comparison.
it's similar to that. But yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I answered my own question instead of listening to you. I
No,
want to know
no,
like
I
with
asked you. I asked
but
you.
with um
I asked you the same question that you asked me, and then you said, "That's a really good question because I wanted to ask you." And I was
yeah.
like, "No, no, Reese, I want you to answer this question."
No, no,
Nice try.
no. But I
Nice
do want
try,
to
but I
know
want your
like
answer.
if I do want to know though, like if painting
Like, if it
halts,
halts everything.
yeah, like is yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that because, um, most of the time, like I said, it's kind of like one thing or the other. Like it's more
Yeah.
like a medium thing, but there are definitely times where they all kind of halt and I just
Coincide.
feel, yeah, like a sort of creative stagnation.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't know. I think I'm still kind of back and forth as to whether for painting, I mean, that's another common tip is like if you're in a creative block, like just paint something.
Mm.
If not to like create a masterpiece, like just to practice, which as a self-taught artist, I know that is something that is helpful, like would be useful to me. But unfortunately, I have a problem with actually I don't practice painting as much as I should. Like which there are times when like I have a creative block because I don't know what technical skills to implement to actually achieve the look that I am imagining, you know?
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think in those moments I've become more comfortable with like experimenting and being like, well, let's just fucking figure it out. Like we'll just figure
Yeah.
out what happens. Um, but yes, so I haven't been forcing myself to paint that much.
Yeah.
And with what I'm painting right now, I knew what I wanted to paint for like the past month or so. But yeah, it's just been a metaphysics problem.
Yeah.
So, but knowing like that I was interested enough in that idea to eventually make it happen, and if I lost interest, then I probably wouldn't have finished that painting anyways.
Yeah.
So, kind of just being okay with like I'll start the painting when the time is right and
Yeah.
um yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I love
I
that.
have I have a silly question to ask you,
Okay.
kind of maybe to wrap things up.
Yeah.
It's more writing focused.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask what some of your favorite sentence constructions are, like almost to the detriment of your paper. Like, because I in reading through mine, I use so many, not only, but also, or like it's not this, but rather, or like, but instead, like I use so many of those. Like I'm like, I need to change some of these up, or people are gonna think that I
Yeah.
used like ChatGPT to write this or
Yeah.
something. Because
Okay.
there's so many, not only, but also.
We need to talk about this. I love this question.
Yeah, the
One,
semicolons and the em dashes.
the
I use
em
them all the
dashes.
time. I've seen so
I'm
many like videos of people being like, if you like this is how you know somebody used AI to write. If they use em dashes, I'm looking at my essay, I'm like, there's so many fucking em dashes in here, man. Like sometimes they
I
just work better than a colon, you know? Or a comma. Sometimes it's just like a strong em dash is it's just
I
all you need.
use
Or semicolon. I use those like obsessively. And I
it
won't stop.
actually makes me kind of emotional. I'm not even kidding.
No, because I'm like, AI is influencing how our language changes now. Like, it's not just us, it's not just how we use language that's influencing the AI, but now the AI is influencing how we use language, and it's getting a little, you know?
Yes. I will never forgive em dashes being taken away from me.
Hey, they're not gone yet. I still use them. Just a
That's
little bit
true. I
more
just don't want
sparingly.
people to think that I use AI, you know what I mean? Because it's
I
like,
think it'll be obvious enough.
I guess that's true, but I use em dashes all the time
Oh, really?
because
Then you might want to cut out a few.
right. Well, even like in texting my friends, like I just
Oh,
like
really?
dash. Yeah, all the time. Like it's just very much how I don't know why in emails, in texting, like I just use them all the time. And I'm like
They're great.
I
They're
feel like
not
a
gone yet.
child has been like ripped away from my hands and it really upsets me. So that's one thing. But in terms of like uh, I use on this a lot because I want to make
Mm,
sure that I'm like connecting back to the thing before. And I think
yes.
with the M dash and on this, what your question made me realize is that I do everything I can for my paper to be one giant run-on sentence without it actually being a run-on
Yes.
sentence.
No, I'm a big fan of run-on sentences. So any way like I can break up a sentence without a period, I'm gonna use
Yeah.
it. An M dash, a colon, a semicolon, a parentheses sometimes if I'm feeling casual and crazy. Because people use them now for lots of academic articles. People
Yeah.
tossed up in parentheses. I'm like, shit, I guess I'm gonna throw in a couple too. If that's what we're doing.
A good old parenth.
Yeah. But no.
Yeah.
Hey, don't let AI take that away from you.
You're right.
Like,
it's already taken so much. We
I
can't
mean,
let them take
eventually
this.
it'll get to a point where it's like, write me an essay in the style of Reese Brown, and like, then it'll be scary. But then what you could do is you could handwrite all your papers on yellow paper. So if anybody asks, you can show them.
No. And I bring out my legal notepad.
Oh, yeah? Well, what would you say about this?
And what would you have to say to my 20 different cut up pieces of paper taped and stapled together?
Oh, yeah? Well, would an AI be silly enough to do this? What about this?
Oh, that's so silly.
No, but
and what about
that?
And what about
the
this?
joke is over. Sometimes I don't know when a joke is over.
No, I love it. I love it. I'm trying to think if there's any other like
I use like here as a sentence connector. Like here, or like when it's basically I'm still talking about this above sentence.
Yeah.
But if I use this, then it's gonna be ambiguous. So just so you know, I'm still talking about that.
Yeah. No, that's good. I think the other
with
thing I'll throw
regards
out
to-
there that I think with regards to that I do a lot is I overuse commas too. And
Me
I've never
too.
learned how not to, and I will never forget Mr. Haygood like ripping me a new one for the amount of commas that I had in one of my papers. Like literally he was like, "This is a great paper. Stop using commas."
I remember that.
I was like, damn, okay. But I still, like, I don't know. I'm like, I want to put the pause in. Like, there are natural pauses in sentences that don't grammatically require commas, but I'm like...
But for stylistically...
Right. And
like how you would read a poem, if you see a comma, there's like a pause.
Right. I think that's the one thing Mr. Haygood taught us that I just fully didn't absorb and have rejected.
Like, okay. You know what the thing he taught us that I never fully absorbed and or rejected? It was how to spell the word elephant.
What?
Remember when we were reading the George Orwell, How to Shoot an Elephant or something?
Yeah, yeah.
And we had to write an essay about it, and I spelled elephant wrong.
Essay! I forgot about that.
But like, I spelled it wrong a couple different ways.
That's
I don't know how I didn't catch that. It must have been a tough time. But,
it must have been a hard time.
That's so I'm pretty sure it's E. I might be putting myself on blast here.
No, you got it. You got it.
ELEPHANT.
I think that's how I would have spelt it, but now I'm like,
well, yeah. Let me just go ahead and check.
Let's just do one of these real quick.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. That's so funny. You know what?
Yeah.
One word I can never spell? Medieval. I don't know why.
I'm gonna guess. My spelling is really bad. MED. Good start. IEVAL.
You got it.
Yes.
You got it. I always want to do MID because it's a period of time and it is in the medieval. And I always want to do MID, and then I'm like,
between the evil times.
In between the evils. And then because IDI looks weird, I end up doing MIDEIVAL. Always.
Wow,
and it's so ridiculous. So that's my word. That's my word that I can't spell. That in restaurant.
I always doubt how I spell the word weird.
Oh yeah.
Oh. Weird. Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, I do. I think, at least when I typed it in, my impulse was WIERD, which is wrong.
It is.
That is wrong. I know.
I know. I've now learned.
But that's one of those words that, like, every time I type it, I'm like, is it this? Should I
Yeah.
switch those? You know?
Because it's I before E except after C, and when it's weird is when
But aren't
is
there
the
other
grammar.
exceptions?
There are, and that's why they're like being cheeky with the like, and when it's weird, because it's like weird and also when it's weird.
Dude, I will never forget. We're doing a lot of random spelling stories. But there was one class that I taught English for a little bit, for those of you who don't know. And there was one day where like my only job in this class was basically like type the notes, and they were being projected on the board, and they were reading the Giver.
Oh yeah.
And so it was like giver, receiver, blah blah blah. For one thing, German keyboard. So I was already spelling everything wrong, but I spelled receive wrong every single time, and not because of the German keyboard. Just because I was spelling it wrong.
Yeah.
I was doing
Were you doing IEVER?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You know it.
That's a weird one though. That's a weird one.
Yeah.
It is weird.
Spelling is tough.
How are German keyboards different?
Let me check.
Are
They're
they
different enough that I felt like an idiot. I was like, I'm supposed to be a teacher. I can't
and
do
I
this.
can't type?
Yes.
Because I always thought I always thought that QWERTY was a universal keyboard.
Well, so this is the German. This is gonna be weird. Oh God. No.
Oh
No?
no! I can kind of see it. Okay. Oh, interesting. That makes
So
sense.
it has like
though.
it has the umlauts on the side,
right, and
I
because
think
so it is QWERTY, but the German alphabet is different.
T and yeah, where Y is on the English. Sorry, I was talking about where Y is on the English one is a Z.
Yeah,
That's different. Where's the?
it's QWERTZ instead of QWERTY.
Yeah, the Z and the Y switched.
That's so interesting.
And F and G as well. No, that's wrong. Forget what I said. F and G are the same. Is that it? Is that the only difference? I don't know. They're a little bit different.
They're a little bit different. That's so interesting. You learn something new
Yeah.
every day. Well, folks, you got a German fun fact. You got creative tips. You got writing tips. You
Yeah.
got painting tips. You got some
Grammar
good old
tips.
some good old giggles.
Some words.
Some
giggles,
words.
some laughs, some stuff.
Some giggles, some laughs, some goofs, and some gaffs.
Absolutely.
Anything else
Yeah.
before we close it out for the day?
No, this was great. It's a educational conversation, a silly conversation, the best of both worlds. As always.
As always.
Lovely to chat.
Lovely to chat.
Yeah.
And hello.
Until
Goodbye.
next time.
Until next
Thank you.
time.
It's not Tuesday.
And you're welcome.
You're welcome.
The Unwritten Aesthetic is a bi-weekly podcast from the Cohere Collective that features philosophical artist or artistic philosopher Lauren Bush and question asker and meaning maker Reese Brown. Please subscribe to The Unwritten Aesthetic wherever you may be listening, and if you enjoyed the episode, consider leaving us a like, a 5-star rating, and or a review. And sharing the episode is a really wonderful way to kickstart meaningful conversations in your own life. If you want to stay up to date on all things The Unwritten Aesthetic, you can follow the Cohere Collective on any social media platform at The Cohere Collective, and check out our other content and offerings at thecoherecollective.com. To explore Lauren's work, head to laurenbushpaints.com and follow her on Instagram and YouTube at laurenbushpaints. If you're interested in working with Reese to find and pursue your purpose, head to thecoherecollective.com to explore life coaching options. A huge thank you to Jack Corbett for the Unwritten Aesthetics music, and thank you all for being here today and exploring the Unwritten Aesthetic with us. As always, we hope you feel like you are living more coherently. Until next time, love.